Welcome to Contracting Conversation. I'm Scott Williams, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Jim Valley. Today, we are continuing our conversation with Professor Dave Lewis. He's a learning asset manager for Con 7640, which is entitled Multiple Incentives. Dave, welcome back to the show. We're really happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Scott.
Well, this one will be interesting because I'm intrigued by the title, Multiple Incentives. So, Dave, kick us off by talking about this new OLT, Con 7640.
Okay. Well, it's made up of 4 lessons, and it's also got 2 videos in it. And it's going to take you somewhere around 6 hours, probably, including a test at the end, to complete this thing. Takes us through structuring multiple incentives, considerations in performing trade-off analyses between the different parameters that you might be trying to incentivize, value analysis, and ultimately coming to agreement with contractor to put the structure in place.
All right, Dave. So, that was a high-level view. So can you go a little more detail on the videos and other assets you have in here?
Sure, would actually love to. I'm pretty proud of these, to be honest with you. I consider these 2 videos, along with the video that hopefully y'all saw when you took the award fee, the 7630. But these 2 videos are, again, subject matter experts talking about the multiple incentive arrangements, very successful multiple incentive arrangements they put together on their programs. The first program detailed is the F-22 sustainment contract, where that subject matter expert talks about how it's structured, how it was negotiated, lessons learned from going through the process, all sorts of good information in that. And then the second video is the 3 subject matter experts, which were the 3 critical players in the execution of the Stryker, the Army Stryker program, its sustainment multiple incentive contract. And both of those programs are held in very high regard by DoD, those incentive arrangements that were put together. So very successful examples to learn from.
That's outstanding. Thanks, Dave.
So, Dave, I'm going to ask you a question that has more to do with the actual course, because we've talked to you already about the other courses in this portfolio on the fixed price, the cost, the award fee. Now, this one's a multiple incentive. So how does this one differentiate itself from those other courses that were specific on the types of incentives? How does this one work? And what are we talking about when we talk about multiple incentives?
We're talking about if you want to incentivize more than just cost control. So maybe you're wanting, you always have to incentivize cost control. Let's just be clear on that. On any incentive contract, you have to always, at a minimum, incentivize cost control. But after that, you may want a little bit longer range on whatever you're buying. You might desire that. It might not be a requirement, but boy, it'd be great if you could get another, say, 5 miles out of that missile range. Or maybe you'd like your plane to go, a little bit faster, or your submarine to be a little bit quieter, things like that. Or maybe you want something delivered a little bit earlier than what the hardcore requirement is, but it'd be great. It'd be very advantageous to you, to the government, if you could get it delivered a little bit earlier. Well, the way we do that to try to get that little extra increment of performance out of a contractor is to incentivize the effort that is above the actual required amount. You could almost consider these desirements, if you will. But that's kind of what incentive contracting is all about. But now, since you're trading these performance issues, these performance improvements against cost, because it's probably going to cost the contractor more to wring that extra mileage out of that missile to get that extra range or whatever, you're going to have to trade off how much is that additional range really worth? What is the value of it? You're going to have to trade off that value against the cost, or maybe trade off the value of that against the value of another incentive you might have on that same contract. So they can get very, very complicated very, very quickly. And in fact, these contracts tend to be the ones we use on our larger major weapon system programs and can get to be pretty complex. So there is a good bit of a complexity involved with these. There's lots of help out there. Folks that have a good bit of experience with this that are more than willing to help. And you're also going to have to get the contractor on board when you're doing this, because they have to sign the contract too. So in these videos, it's interesting to hear the subject matter experts talk about the idea that they had to sell the contractor on the idea of even being willing to use these multiple incentives, because the contractors were initially kind of nervous about using these things too. But as you listen to the videos, you'll see the strategies they employ to do that. So it's very interesting course, very interesting videos.
Dave,
Hey,
a quick
Dave-
follow-on. I'm sorry, Jim.
Go ahead.
Dave, a quick follow-on question to that is, we talked about it in the last recording we did on Con 7630 about having more than just the contracting folks possibly taking the course. It certainly sounds like this particular course would be a great fit for folks that are, hey, we're working on the ACT plan. We're talking about how we're going to incentivize the contractor. To me, this reaches beyond just contracting. I think it'd be obviously a great course for anybody in contracting to take, and highly recommend that they do. But it sounds like a great course for people that are on the acquisition team so that they understand what they're asking the contractor to do in performance. So just talked about that just a little bit about who you think might be a great target audience for this.
Great point, Scott. Frankly, in multiple incentive contracts, the contracting officer is going to be tied to the hip to the program manager and some of the technical people as they are developing all of these incentives and the strategies they're going to use, what kind of value they have, what kind of share ratio we might be using on these things. Because, oh, by the way, that share ratio, a change in the share ratio changes the value of that incentive. It changes the entire geometry. So there's a whole lot going on here, a whole lot of complexity. And those technical people need to understand what's going on, why it is so important that they do the analysis right, get the values right, do the best they possibly can on estimates, because boy, that's going to affect the outcome significantly. So yeah, if you think you're going to touch one of these, I'd strongly encourage you to take this course.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Dave. So I'm going to go into another area. I was a logistics career broadener at Tinker, Oklahoma City. A big thing that's very important is obviously the sustainment tail. So have you seen what kind of incentives, like, are they incentivizing for mean time between failure being a higher number, fuel usage, operating costs, repair time when it has to go into depot or parts have to go into depot? Have you seen any of those kind of incentives?
Absolutely, those types of things. But ultimately, it's just your operational rate. How many sorties can you generate? Things like that. They tend to focus on end goals where they can, as opposed to trying to measure the nits. But yeah, they'll actually absolutely look at things like mean time to repair, mean time between failure. All of those logistics measures that talk to you about how reliable systems are. But basically, what it comes down to is how many operational missions can they generate? How many are they not able to generate because things aren't repaired?
Right. So that's a very important aspect that people need to understand. The cost, the sustainment cost is just so much more than the procurement costs.
Oh yeah, study after study after study shows that about 70 to 75% of your total acquisition cost is going to be in the logistics tail. The front end gets all the press because that's when everything's new, the technology's new, and all that. But yeah, the real costs add up over that long time period, the life of the system.
Okay, that's great to hear, Dave. Thanks.
Just a comment too, just thinking about what Jim just asked. I think just to add on to that target audience for folks out there that are doing post-award, you have to administer these contracts. So these would be great classes for you to take to understand the structure of the contract, why it was done the way it was done, and then tips on how to administer a contract that has multiple incentives. So just something I want to kind of add on. Maybe not so much a question for you, Dave, but just another comment about how important it might be to really understand how these incentives work.
I'll even add to that, because absolutely they need to be involved at the tail end, but bring them in at the front end of this thing, because they know what kind of data the contractor may have available that this, and the key to all of this is having the data to measure. Okay, all of these performance incentives is having the data to measure. DCMA should know what kind of data that contractor has internal to them that might be very, very beneficial for the government to use to measure performance. So yeah, bring them in early. Good point.
And by the way, Dave, the cost for data is a lot less if you can pull it from their system versus telling them how you want it. So that's just another thought. This is a great topic. Before we close this out, okay, you talked quickly about how students will be appraised, that they got the material that they need to get, knowledge. Can you talk more about that and how that works?
Well, they're going to be, it's a multiple choice test, and basically, if you just pay attention to the learning objectives for each chapter as you're going through, there will be 3 or 4 learning objectives to each chapter, and as long as you pay attention to those, you should have absolutely no problem with the test, because the test is drawn directly from those learning objectives. We're not trying to do any tricks to you or anything. It's all very, very straightforward. We just want to make sure that you understand the material we presented. We're not trying to trick you at all. So very straightforward test.
All right, thanks, Dave. So I know we've talked about a lot here. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
I would just repeat that anybody that's even thinking about getting involved in multiple incentive contracts, definitely take this course, but strongly also consider taking the courses that lead up to this, the FPIF, the CPIF, the award fee award term, because guess what? All 3 of those types of contracts can be in a multiple incentive contract. So you need to be familiar with those, sort of a walk before you run type of deal. Okay, so I'd strongly recommend that. Thanks for asking.
Hey, no problem. And I tell you, this is going to be a fantastic credential. I mean, the courses under here are amazing, and it's online. So guess what? You can take it anytime, 24/7. So that's fantastic. So Dave, thanks for coming on the show to talk about Con 7640 and multiple incentives.
Thanks for letting me.
All right. Okay, so for those out there, I have a big ask, and that is, please, if you can, click the like button. That helps us. That helps YouTube determine to advertise on their platform. You could do the same thing with liking DAU Media and also with Apple Podcasts. So please do that, and also subscribe so that you'll get our next video or podcast. So that's all for today. Thank you for coming on board, and we look forward to future contracting conversations with you.